Hey, what's up, you guys? I'm Tatiana, and today we'll be talking about this humongous chungus, this absolute unit of an animal. This is Eponine, otherwise known as Epi or Panini, and she's a blue tongue skink. And with Panini's help, by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what you need to take care of these awesome animals. So let's get started. Eponine is a K-Island blue tongue skink, which is a subspecies found in the island regions of Indonesia. Blue tongue skinks are found throughout Australia and parts of Indonesia, and their care is slightly different based on where they're from. So throughout this video, you'll hear me say northern blue tongue skink, which means it comes from Australia, or Indonesian blue tongue skink. Both northern and Indonesian species of skink are, in my opinion, pretty easy to care for. Indos might be a little more difficult than northerns for reasons we'll talk about in a minute, but overall, I think these are wonderful species to own. The most daunting thing about blue tongue skinks is their size. These are large-bodied lizards, and because they're so big, they need a lot of space. Some species of blue tongue skink can get 30 inches long or more, so it's best to give them a large enclosure that they can explore. I wouldn't recommend anything smaller than a 4-foot by 2-foot enclosure for an adult blue tongue skink. And actually, I have Eponine in a 5.5-foot long enclosure that is about 190 gallons, and she uses every inch of her home. If you want to see exactly how I built her tank, I'll include a link to that video down below. Skinks are solitary animals, and they can be very territorial, so only house one skink per enclosure. There are exceptions to this rule, but it usually requires an outdoor or a massive zoo enclosure for all the skinks to be healthy, so I don't recommend cohabbing them for a beginner keeper. This animal can also live for over 20 years, so be aware you can have this large lizard for a very long time. Now let's talk about temps and lighting. Blue tongue skinks are cold-blooded, so they rely on their environment to regulate their heat. Their enclosure will need a basking temperature, a hot side temperature, and a cold side temperature so that the animal can self-regulate. The basking temperature is really important to get correct, and it should stay between 100 and 110 degrees Fahrenheit. There are a ton of different heating options for reptiles, so find one that works for you. Personally, I use a Home Depot halogen bulb and hook it up to a thermostat which keeps it at the temperature I want. The air temperature should stay between 85 and 95 degrees Fahrenheit, and the cool side should stay between 70 and 80 degrees. Skinks also require a Uvb bulb. There are a lot of brands available, but my go-to is Arcadia. And if you have your skink in a bioactive enclosure, you will need a light for your plants as well. At night, all of the lights can turn off, and as long as your house doesn't drop below 65 degrees Fahrenheit, you won't need any additional heat source. The humidity of your enclosure will vary based on what species of skink you have. I'll include a link down below that breaks it down by species, but typically, northern species like it between 40 and 60% humidity, and Indonesian species require anywhere from 60 to 100% humidity. A northern's needs will be met by regular misting of their enclosure, but Indonesians are a bit trickier to maintain. Due to their needs, I have my enclosure hooked up to a mist king system, which regulates my humidity, but a reptile fogger would be a cheaper alternative that does the same thing. If you don't have a mist king, other good ways of increasing your humidity are having a thick layer of substrate, misting by hand daily, installing a humid hide, and having a large water dish. The humidity requirements of Indonesian skinks is what makes them a little bit more difficult to own, so if you don't think you can keep up with regular, daily misting, I would consider getting a northern instead. Regardless of what species of skink you get, they are known to be burrowing lizards, so they need 4 to 6 inches of substrate in their enclosures. You can make your own substrate mix by using organic topsoil, play sand, reptile chips, eco-earth, and sphagnum moss, or you can buy pre-made kits online from the Biodude or other reptile companies. If you've chosen to go the bioactive route, don't forget to add your cleanup crew to truly bring your soil to life. This microfauna will help break down waste and provide nutrients to your live plants. All bioactive enclosures should be given a month or more before adding your animal in. This waiting period allows your cleanup crew to become established and your plants to take root. As for how to set up your enclosure, it's a good idea to have a lot of different hides and decor available for your skink to explore. These are actually relatively intelligent lizards, which means they need to have the mental stimulation that comes from an interesting enclosure. At the bare minimum, you should have a cold hide, a warm hide, and a humid hide for them to use, as well as a basking spot and some live or fake plants for coverage. Decorating a tank is my favorite part of setting up an enclosure, so feel free to be creative with this step. I'll only talk about diet briefly because I have an entire video dedicated to Blue Tongue Skink diets that you can go watch. I'll link it down below. Skinks are omnivores and can eat a large variety of foods including bugs, fruits, vegetables, meat, eggs, and even dog or cat food. What you feed your skink and how many times a week you feed it all depend on how old your animal is. Adults should only be fed once to twice a week and require a diet that is 50% protein and 50% greens and vegetables. It is really important to monitor how much protein adult skinks are eating because too much can lead to obesity and even kidney failure. Baby and juvenile skinks can be fed daily or up to 3 times a week and need a diet that is 70 to 80% protein for the first year of their life. Feeding should be supplemented with reptile calcium and reptile multivitamins. Feeding time is a great opportunity to add enrichment to your skink's life, so feel free to use a lot of different food options as treats for your animal to try. I'll include a link of safe and unsafe foods for a blue tongue skink down below. As for handling and temperament, it is pretty common knowledge that northern blue tongue skinks are much friendlier and social than their Indonesian cousins. Northerns are also usually more expensive as well, since their breeding projects are more established. With Indonesian species, there's a much higher chance that the animal you're purchasing is wild-caught or born from a wild-caught female, which leads to the lower price point. Their personality is also more shy, much less social, and sometimes even aggressive. You'll also have to pay vet fees to remove parasites if you accidentally buy a wild-caught individual, like I did 4 years ago when I bought Eponine. Always do your research on breeders you buy from. The person I bought Epi from told me over and over again that she was captive bred, but he was a liar. I found out later that she was full of pinworms, and I also had to treat her for reptile mites. So don't be like younger me, do your research on breeders or you'll spend twice as much in vet bills later. Well, that's all I have for you guys today. If you have any questions, be sure to leave them in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to my channel. As always, I'm Tatiana, this is my tiny zoo, and I'll see you guys next time.